We're here with Nate again. Nate, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about Jim Farley. I want to say Chris Farley because the guy, he just reminds me of Tommy Boy. Nate wants to really hit on this. This must have triggered you, Nate, this
Yeah.
video. So I'm going to play some clips. Nate's going to react to these clips, and I've got what I think will be some hot button topics to give people an idea of what this interview was. A couple of weeks ago, Jim Farley did an interview and he made some comments stirring the internet up a little bit. And it kind of shows how out of touch these CEOs are.
At Ford, and we're also a kind of company that doesn't like observing problems. We like fixing them. What's the blunt reality if we can't get this fixed? Inflation, delays. Right now, it's 10 years to build a bridge in our country. It'll be 20. You want all these data centers built, you got to be waiting, and it's going to cost a lot more than it should. And probably the bigger is the social cost of all these million jobs that could be great contributors to our economy that won't unless we do something. That's probably the biggest cost. When I'm 62 years old, I think more and more about that person, that million, one of those million people, how their life could be changed if they can be a mechanic at a Ford dealership, but they just don't know how to get from here to there.
So he says they just don't know how to get from here to there, as if the problem with the technician shortage in automotive is because people are just sitting there wondering what job they could do, but they're not sure how to get from there to a Ford dealership.
All right. Well, I'm going to tear this dude apart because that's about the dumbest stuff I've ever heard. But the reason I'm so frustrated about it is because I don't think that Jim Farley's actually stupid. I think that he's corrupt. In fact, I know that he's corrupt, and I know that he knows better. Jim Farley, let's remember where this guy came from. He's part of the automotive deep state. Jim Farley is a previous employee of Lexus Corporate. Jim Farley was in charge of sales, marketing, and customer satisfaction at Lexus during some of their most productive years, leading up to around 2007 or 6, I believe it was. So he's somebody that they pulled out of Lexus with a more competitive compensation package. So don't let anybody tell you that Jim Farley is dumb. He's not dumb. He's corrupt. And the reason he's so corrupt is because he is the beta of the board of directors. The board of directors dominate him and tell him exactly what to do. He answers to them. I know that he knows that this is how this dynamic works because he is on the board of directors of another company that is in turmoil right now, Harley Davidson. He was brought onto the board of directors at Harley Davidson to help perpetuate their electrification mythology that they thought was going to sit well with Harley Davidson owners, one of the most conservative markets in the personal mobility ecosphere. So Jim Farley knows a lot better. This is obviously a complete and total joke, but that's what's so frustrating is that it's not stupidity. If it was stupidity, I guess he can't help himself, but it's not. It's corruption. He knows dramatically better than what he's saying. So let me tell you exactly why there is a labor shortage, a technician shortage at Ford franchises, as well as General Motors, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia. Let me tell you what these guys aren't going to tell you. These franchises are basically giant cotton picking operations for mechanics. Now, what do I mean? Well, I respect these mechanics to the fullest. I'm not saying that, I'm not putting them down, but what I am saying is that they enslaved these people at these ridiculous wages by lying to them. So, how does this work? So, let me start from the beginning. If you're somebody who's watching this and you don't know the background story or why this is such a ridiculous and tectonic thing right now, what people should understand is that there is a desperate technician shortage amongst manufacturers at the franchise level. So this would be your local car dealership. So when you drive by your local Buick GMC or Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram or whatever have you, there's a chance that they are actively desperate for technicians. Now, if you go on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever have you, if you go look at jobs there, or you call in and say, hey, I'd like to work there, they'll tell you that they might start you at $35, $40, $45 an hour, these really competitive numbers. And you might hear that and say, wow, $40 an hour, that sounds great. What's wrong with that? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with that. You need to provide your own tools. You need to you need to work flat rate. And flat rate is probably the biggest scam in the automotive industry. Flat rate means that you get paid a set amount of money rational to the quantity of hours that job takes to perform according to a standardized system that is used by that manufacturer. So, what does this mean? Let's say you need to replace a transmission, and that job pays for 9 hours according to the book. Well, if that takes 15 hours, you got paid 9 hours. If that takes 5 hours, you also got paid 9 hours. So people might say, okay, well, if you're able to work really quickly, I guess, that's probably a good thing. You'll make more money than that per hour. The issue is that all of the book times are it's not even remotely close to how long the job actually takes. And so what ends up happening is you're not making $40 an hour, you're netting $20 to $25 an hour. Well, that's the kind of numbers that they're paying people at our local Costco. So they lure these people in with these manipulative numbers that make them believe that they're going to make more money and have a better living for their family than they expected when they first took the job. They guarantee you $40 an hour. They guarantee you 40 hours a week. Well, the average person says, okay, I'll make $1,600 a week pre-tax. The issue is that's not what happens. You bring home dramatically less. And so people get into these dealerships and they start to hate the place because they were misled into thinking it was something very different. And then the other thing is that people who do brake jobs and tire and even service advisory make more money than some of the most senior technicians. And the other problem is that these companies have very ridiculous promotional standards. And so people that are totally unqualified, almost exclusively and religiously, reach the highest levels of leadership at both the franchise and the corporate level. So Ford is churning out technicians because they have nothing to offer technicians and because they enslave and abuse them systematically in the most disgusting ways I can imagine. And that is the truth. And if somebody tells you otherwise, they're lying or misinformed.
Yeah, the Car Care Nut had a really good video on this whole subject and talked about exactly what you're saying is, it incentivizes all the wrong behavior too. When you have these technicians that are qualified and they want to do good work in order to meet the flat rate hours, they really can't do excellent work. They can't do quality work in order to meet those hours. And then they also game the system and they'll try to make up time in other areas. If a job says it takes 4 hours, but they've figured out a shortcut to make it 2 hours, well, they're going to take those shortcuts to try to make up some time because they know an engine replacement might take more than 28 hours or whatever it is. So it's sad what's going on.
Well, there are multiple issues with flat rate that I think people are vocal about, but I don't think the public understands. When the public takes their vehicle to the dealership, they don't understand that they're perpetuating a system that hurts the people working there. And I don't mean to blame them. I blame the manufacturers for their corrupt behavior, people like Jim Farley at Ford Motor Company. Now, the issue is that, let's say, for example, you have to do a head gasket on a 6-liter Power Stroke, like every other one of them, apparently. And let's say the book says that's a 16-hour job. Let's say you get in there and you find out that one of the torque to angle bolts is snapped off in the block, and you now have to machine that bolt out. You have to go through all sorts of additional measures to complete this task that you charge the customer 16 hours of labor for. Let's say that technician puts 32 hours in when they're done. After those 32 hours at $40 an hour, getting paid for 16 hours, they basically just make $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And so this is how they abuse the technician. The other reason flat rate makes no sense is because it shifts the incentive from correct work to quick work. And so when you get paid a flat rate for the job, the incentive is now to do it as quickly as humanly possible. The comeback is not penalized against you. It actually gets even worse than that. So another way they're abusing these people is by paying them deficit hours for warranty work. So let's say that same transmission replacement, R&R, that was 9 hours in the previous example, is now a warranty job. They might say, well, we're only going to pay you 5 hours. How? What's the difference? I have to take it out and I have to put it in. I have to program it, road test it, flush it, etc. Why is it now only worth 5 hours? Well, why is it that when warranty work, which is billed to the manufacturer, when warranty work is being performed, it's performed at a fraction of the price of retail work, which is billed to the customer? Are you overcharging the customer or are you undercharging the manufacturer? Well, go figure, the manufacturer is in charge of this system. So the answer would be both, because you have corrupt automotive deep state bad faith actors like Jim Farley at Ford Motor Company, who construct systems like this that are very quickly becoming industry standard to abuse the technician. Now, let's say you're a technician who works at a facility like this. How long do you need to put up with this culture before you just hate the automotive industry? It sickens you, it demoralizes you. That's why I call these places modern day cotton picking operations. That's exactly what they are. They're systematic abuses of laborers. And in exchange, they say, look, you're not being enslaved. We're paying you. Well, slaves got housing and food too. It doesn't mean they weren't slaves. So these people are being abused economically, and it leads to psychological deterioration, people hating their job, people feeling emotionally or spiritually unwell. These are people that don't want to work there anymore. When you hate your job, there's no way to really be good at it. I would tell people, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you can't stand that person, you're probably going to be a bad partner because you don't even like that person. Well, of course, everybody at dealerships is bad at their job. Not everybody, but many people, most people, I would say, in most cases, they hate the job. It's not that they're bad workers or that they don't know any better. It's that they hate the fucking place. Excuse me, you can bleep that out. They hate the place, and they have every reason to hate the place. Of course, they're bad employees. The business hasn't earned them being a good employee. That's the reason that Ford is at a deficit of technicians. The other thing is when you talk about open bays, lest we forget, technicians need more than one bay. If you get hung up on a job, you need to be able to work somewhere else. If a technician is only allocated one bay and they run into a hang up on a job where they have to wait for a part, and that incurs 6 hours of thumb twiddling where they don't get to do their job, that's 6 hours that they're not getting paid for because they're paid on a set rate based on the quantity of hours necessary to do the job. It is a giant scam designed to abuse both consumers and laborers at franchises. Now, Ford is not the only company doing this. Most companies do this when it comes to manufacturers, OEMs. But this is just another example of these OEM cartels abusing the public and bad faith actors and corrupt executives like Jim Farley at Ford Motor Company perpetuating this system, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then they warn that higher prices are coming because of this shortage.
Just to clarify, higher prices are coming because the board of directors is demanding bigger numbers every earnings report. Jim Farley just received a pay cut because he was not able to meet quality and marketing standards that they were expecting out of him. So his compensation package actually went down for the year 2025. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. He's working for the shareholder, not the customer. And that's the reason that his pay went down. It's not because customers are happier or less happy. It's because shareholders are less happy. And as a function of that, they're trying to punish him. I predict that they're going to replace him if he doesn't turn the boat around and start producing more income for Ford Motor Company rather than better vehicles for the consumers. That's part of his corruption.
President Trump has focused a lot on bringing back manufacturing to the U.S. Now, on paper, this sounds absolutely amazing. Well, what if we see that spike in demand and we don't have the workers to satisfy them?
Well, that's what's going to happen. That is what is happening right now. It'll be inflation. It'll be these projects take twice as long. I was talking to a construction CEO today, and he said, hey, this is a $4 billion. Now it's to be a $5 billion program. I just know, Jim, because I can't find, so I got to steal people, and I have to pay more. Which is
the funny part about this is he's trying to portray this problem almost like what Mike Rowe does, and he even mentioned Mike Rowe in that interview, like as if Ford's having the problem and they're trying to solve it just like Mike Rowe does, which is create more trade programs, and they're going to invest in these in getting people involved into becoming technicians. And the problem is that people don't want to do it. The problem is that people are told you need a college degree and a white collar job, not an automotive technician job. That's the root cause, and that's what he says the root cause of all this is that it's just a want. Like people don't want to do that work. Completely false.
So that is probably some of the dumbest stuff I've ever heard. That's total propaganda. He knows better. Like I said, this guy was at Lexus and frankly did a good job when he was at Lexus. He knows better. We are the generation. Okay, now keep in mind, I'm in my 20s. I'm a younger guy. All right, but I would like to say maybe your generation on down, people started realizing that the trades are underrepresented in the marketplace, and it was driving up the cost of that labor. And that means that back in the day, if you told your teacher that you wanted to be a garbage man, they would look at you crazy. Now, if you told your teacher you want to be a teacher, she'd be like, well, I have to start an OnlyFans to pay my bills. You don't want to be a teacher. So being a trash collector is, as far as I'm concerned, dramatically more sensible than being a teacher. Teachers are desperately underpaid. There's a lot of people going into the profession, and unfortunately, it's largely government regulated because they teach at public schools. And I would argue that being a plumber or an electrician or a trash collector is 100 times a better idea than going to college, especially if you're not going for some sort of lucrative STEM degree that's probably going to be overtaken by AI soon anyway. And I think that change happened about 40 years ago. I think about 40 years ago, people started realizing, hey, blue collar can make you some excellent money. I mean, I have multiple staff here who make six figures as tradesmen, not engineers, not execs. You know, at my firm, there are multiple people making six figures as laborers. So I can assure you that that's totally false. And maybe if he didn't grow up with a rich dad in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a high income community going to a preparatory school, he would feel differently. But I have a feeling that he's been exposed to better data than that, and that he's just lying to the public, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he kind of groups in like electricians and plumbers and says, oh, we have this huge trade problem, as if the automotive technician problem is the same as the trade problem we have. They're not the same. Automotive techs are leaving to go be plumbers and electricians because they're more respected. They make more money. They can run their own business. Like, there's tons of automotive techs saying, hey, I can work with my hands. I can do this car work. I can certainly do HVAC and electricity. It's actually more simple than most of these modern vehicles.
Well, and that's the other thing. So here's another thing that Jim Farley clearly understands but doesn't feel like saying. These vehicles are becoming impossible to work on. I've been saying this for years as an engineer, as somebody who designs parts for Ford vehicles. I've been saying this the entire time. It's going to get to a point where it's so unfixable that they can't even fix it. And you're seeing the beginning of that. All of this CAN bus technology, high-speed voltage system, supplemental inflation, all this emissions control device, all of this stuff. The cars become unserviceable. And now that's nothing lost on them, because they'll just sell you another one. And then they'll mark up the loan, because now they're a finance company. These guys want to become finance companies. I've said all of this in previous videos, and every now and then there's somebody who gets on the keyboard and starts crying. Hey, you don't know what you're talking about. I have been right every single time that I have said that OEMs are becoming finance, software, and data companies, because that's where all the money is at. And they know that selling you a car is not going to cut it. So they want to sell you data. They want to sell you financing. They want to sell you technology, software subscriptions. The monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue model is a goldmine for corporate valuations. Jim Farley receives over 90% of his corporate income as stock options. Look it up. Those 90% go up when the company valuation goes up. Well, if he can't squeeze extra capital out of the system, he can at least alter the business model to a business model that is closer to data or finance or software or technology, so that they can try and increase the multiple of earnings associated with Ford's valuation. Ford has a $44 billion valuation. That sounds like a big number. It's not. Ferrari has a $90 billion valuation. Ferrari, a much smaller company, you would think. Ford is desperately trying to stimulate investor activity. And that's why they're blaming every single person they can find under the sun for these problems. It's a matter of corruption, and they're trying to magnetize people to invest in the automotive industry, knowing that nobody in their right mind would invest in the automotive industry. And that's why most major ETFs, mutual funds, and other money market accounts generally stay away from the automotive sector unless we're talking engineering or manufacturing. There's really no money in selling a damn car to people, and they know that.
He starts to blame, of course, tariffs and
of course
the parts.
$2 billion net tariff impact this year. How does that make you feel as a CEO of a company like Ford? I mean, it's frustrating because we're the most American auto company and we export the most, and yet we have this $2 billion headwind, which prevents me from investing even more in the U.S. So it's frustrating. But I got to tell you, we've had some really good conversations with the Trump administration. I know they feel our pain. I know they want to help us with this problem. What I've seen them do on the EPA side, really put the EPA tailpipe emissions more in line with customer real demand. That gives me hope that we're going to find a solution for that $2 billion parts bill.
Is the pain most acute in auto parts?
Yes, that's where it is. Basically, the tariffs should theoretically help Ford, whether it's bilateral from Japan or South Korea or Mexico or Canada. Our competitors make a lot of their trucks outside the US. I don't. I make 100% here. Theoretically, that's higher cost for them. The reality is, if you want to make it in the US, I have to import literally thousands of dollars of parts on F-150, the best-selling car in America, to make it affordable for people.
That part just kills me. It's like, we're the most American. We're the most American. Wait, we're gonna get hit with $2 billion in tariffs, and then to come out and say like, oh well, the Trump administration needs to like not do these tariffs. Like, do you understand the root purpose behind the tariffs was to move manufacturing back, including manufacturing for the parts, which it's as if they don't even understand what problem the tariffs are trying to push them to solve. And yeah, I don't agree with how fast Trump's trying to do it, but he just went in circles there. Nothing he said made sense to me.
Well, I can tell you why it makes sense to him. The board of directors doesn't want to manufacture in America because it's dramatically more expensive and they have to deal with union labor, okay? Union labor. Now, obviously, I want to see workers treated with dignity. I think any reasonable person does, but I'm just being honest. Whether this is popular or not, I don't really care because it's true. Union labor has inflicted extraordinary damage on these companies' abilities to do their job. It puts them under the gun to pay dramatically inflated costs for lots of different things. And it's very difficult on them. And now I'm not saying that the correct answer is to then abuse your worker, because it's not. What I am saying is that, there's countries where no such thing exists. And that means that these products can be manufactured at a fraction of the price. Well, if these products can be manufactured at a fraction of the price, why would you want to do them here in America? So the reason they're not migrating all of this labor into the United States is because they're hoping that Trump, being as this is his second term, and he can't run again, theoretically. I understand there's some jargon about that, whatever. My point is, they think he's going to get out in 2028. Okay, and they think that most likely we'll have a blue person in the White House at that point, meaning that these tariffs may change again. So the excuse me, the automotive industry does not seek to make change very quickly because the regulatory environment blows with the wind. And so they try to make the most stable decisions they can. The other thing is they learn the hard way with EVs. As I mentioned, EVs were never going to become market dominant in the United States by 2035. It is not economically possible.
Oh, they talked about that. Let's
sure.
Before you comment on the EVs, let me play just that part.
You said customers are not interested in $75,000 EVs.
Yes.
Is the reality that the EV market's just going to be smaller than people thought?
Yes. And I think we've learned. I mean, it's anytime there's new technology. What if your Motorola and Apple comes along with the iPhone, things changed when technology moves through an industry like it's.
And then he goes on to say how they got to compete with, like, kind of catch up to and compete with BYD. I'm like, dude, you so
can't.
far behind.
You can't. There you go. You can't. I just saved you a bunch of consulting money. You can't compete with BYD. There you go. Well, it's not going to change. And I said 5 years ago, in 2020, during COVID, I am on record everywhere you can find me saying this EV stuff is just not going to happen. Okay, it's nothing more than a pipe dream. It can't happen. It's not mathematically possible. It's not economically possible. It's not. We don't have the ability to support that much energy by any stretch of imagination. I was living in a radical, renegade, communist, criminal state at the time called California, and we had rolling blackouts on a daily basis in California, even before everybody had EVs. So it's just a completely diabolically unintelligent thing to say. And he knows that. But what he's doing is he's speaking using coded language. Now, it looks like he's on some sort of investing show, like CNBC or something like that. He's speaking to people who are investors. CNBC is watched by finance people. He's speaking to investors, and he's trying to say things that make people feel comfortable about the market as a future to try and mitigate the behavior of people who short stocks like Ford Motor Company. He's trying to prevent put options. Okay. Now, put options are something in the market that many people don't know about, and it's basically betting against a stock. Okay. It's the opposite of a call option. All right. Now, put options indicate that people believe that stock is going to go down in value and they want to be able to sell it at the original price. And somebody has to buy your put option saying, I think it's going to go up and I want to be able to buy it at the original price. So you lock in a transaction value and whatever happens happens. Now obviously if the stock goes up, the people doing the put option are in a bad position, whereas if it goes down, the people doing the put option are in a good position. Put options, if there's a lot of them, can press the value of a stock downward by creating a sell-off when you have a lot of people that are trying to short the stock and push the value down. And so that's why he goes on networks like this to try and dilute the mind of investors and tell them that things are going to get better. This is just a giant pillow talking event. That's why I call Jim Farley at Ford Motor Company the chief propaganda officer, similar to what he was at Lexus.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. And I'm glad that everybody's, seemingly calling him out on this.
People must understand that people like Jim Farley, the CEO, are not the top of the totem pole. Now, people usually think CEO, well, I mean, how much higher does it get, right? Well, dramatically higher. You have a board of directors. The CEO is an employee of the board of directors. And the board of directors just cut his pay because he's such a garbage chief executive. So the reality is that this guy is trying to preserve his job. He knows that he's on the verge of getting voted out. He knows that the board of directors thinks that he's totally incompetent because he's totally incompetent. And this is what you're dealing with in the automotive industry nowadays. Jim Farley, Mary Barra, these are all emblematic of the automotive deep state. That's what they are. And when I say things like that, people say, Nate, that's crazy. It sounds conspiratorial. Explain to me how I'm incorrect. Explain to me how somebody in a position of authority like that, using their access to their access to platform to spread information that they know damn well is made up. He's not stupid. He knows that those things are untrue. If you know they're untrue, then that means you're dishonest, not stupid. Imagine having that sort of power and using that position to go out and say things that you know are completely and totally false. That's a blatantly dishonest person. That is the automotive deep state. And for anyone who just saw that video with Jim Farley at Ford Motor Company, you just heard the voice of automotive propaganda.
Yeah, I'll link to it in the description. Everybody can watch the full thing and let us know what you think in the comments.
Fake news.
Yeah,